Day 2 of the 2025 US Open just wrapped up, and my draw is already busted. Now, I will say I got quite a few correct in the first round, both on the men's and the women's side. Once that first round wraps up tomorrow, I'm going to add it all up and let you guys know how I did. I picked Mboko to go into the semis. I picked Keys to go into the semis. And I picked Svitolina to go into the quarters, and all of them are out of the tournament in the first round. In today's video, I'm going to talk about some interesting matches that I've seen today. And let's start with two of my draw busters, Mboko and Keys. And there are some interesting things that we can talk about regarding these two players. So I said earlier this year, after Keys won the Australian Open, that she has a golden opportunity to finish 2025 as the #1 ranked player in the world. That, of course, didn't happen. Madison Keys, after winning Australian Open, in the next tournament, she reached the semifinals of Indian Wells, where she lost 6-0, 6-1 to Sabalenka. And since then, Madison Keys has not reached a single semifinal of any tournament. Now, she has been winning matches, but nowhere near displaying the form that she displayed at the Australian Open. And there are several possible reasons why Madison's form dipped after winning the Grand Slam. And I was interested to see when Madison Keys started playing professional tournaments, because she's 30 years old and she's been on tour for a while. And the first professional tournament that she played was in 2009. So Madison Keys has been playing professional tennis for 16 years. And in her 16th year of professional tennis, she finally wins her Grand Slam title after she had a great opportunity to win the US Open. And she's been regarded as one of the best players to never win a Grand Slam title. So she basically accomplished her life goal as a tennis player. And it is quite possible that some of the motivation that Keys had prior to the Australian Open is gone. This might be very subtle. Maybe these are small percentages in motivation, something that Novak Djokovic has been struggling with in tournaments outside the Grand Slams, for example. And when you lack that little bit of motivation, it's going to be impossible to win the most important tournaments. Now, in today's match against Zarazua, I did not think that Madison was going to lose this one. Zarazua is more of a defender. She keeps a lot of balls in play, and she is tough to beat, but Madison possesses the firepower to blow somebody like that off the court. But Keys said that she was very nervous prior to this match, and she committed a lot of unforced errors. But the way I'm looking at it, after being on tour for 16 years, Madison Keys wins the Grand Slam tournament, and she's accomplished her lifetime goal. And whatever happens after the Australian Open of this year is just a bonus. But if she retired tomorrow, she's going to be regarded as one of the best American players of all time. And for sure, one of the most powerful hitters that we've seen on the WTA Tour. Now, of course, it's not over for Madison Keys. She can play for many more years, and it's quite possible that she recovers her form. I think it might start happening actually after the Australian Open next year, because there's going to be a lot of pressure going into that tournament, having to defend all those points. So Madison might win more big titles, or she might not. We're going to have to see. But nevertheless, she is a phenomenal player to watch, and I wish her all the best. Now, in Mboko's case, it is somewhat similar, but it's also different, because she also won a huge title. Not a Grand Slam, but for somebody that's Canadian, winning that Masters 1000 level tournament or the WTA 1000 in Canada is like winning a Grand Slam. For you guys that watched that tournament in Montreal, it was basically a Davis Cup atmosphere anytime Mboko was playing. So winning that tournament was an incredible success, and I was very impressed with her level. Her athleticism is off the charts. She has incredible power on the serve, the forehand, and the backhand. And it's for that reason that I picked her to go into the semis. I can see Mboko rising very high in the rankings. She also strikes me as someone who's mentally tough, because while players might get a boost from playing in front of a home crowd, certainly other players might feel more pressure than usual and falter under that pressure. So the fact that she was able to win that tournament in Montreal tells me that she's mentally very stable and that she can handle pressure. So there's absolutely no shame in losing to Krejcikova in the first round. This was an absolute nightmare draw for Mboko. Barbara is playing a lot better, and she's going to be dangerous in this tournament. So I actually thought for a while when I had to select the winner for that first round match, it was for me a 50-50 match. I could have easily picked Krejcikova. But this is for sure not a setback for Mboko. She's going to do big things in the near future. Now, moving on to another young player, and that's Fonseca. And interestingly, after he received a lot of hype earlier this year because he played extremely well. He won the Challenger in Canberra. He blazed through the qualities of the Australian Open, destroying anyone. And then he beat Rublev in the first round of the Australian Open and then lost a very difficult 5-setter to Sonego. After that tournament, he won his first title in Buenos Aires, and then he continued to play well by winning the Challenger in Phoenix, where he beat Bublik in the final. And then in Miami, I thought he played well, winning a couple of matches before losing to Alex de Minaur. After the Miami tournament, Fonseca's form cooled off a little bit, and he didn't play well until Roland Garros. And he impressed me at that tournament because he won a couple of matches. He then again won a couple of matches at Wimbledon, but other than that, there was a slight dip in form. And what happens these days on social media is that everyone gets destroyed, and especially young players that receive some hype after great results, which is something that naturally happens. How can you not hype somebody up that's young and doing well on tour? Of course, people are going to speculate whether this young player has a chance to make it all the way to the top. So over the past few months, I've seen a very common narrative of social media that Fonseca is overhyped. And this could not be further from the truth. The amount of hype that Fonseca was receiving was appropriate. Somebody that wins the ATP Next Gen Finals should get some hype. People should get excited about a young player that's very talented. But on today's tour, the players that are ranked lower, let's say anyone who's not seeded at a Grand Slam, between 32 and let's say 100 in the world, the level of these players is incredibly high, maybe higher than it's ever been in the history of tennis. So it is my belief that it's more difficult nowadays for young players to break through the top than it might have been in the past. And especially when we have these unbelievable players at the top of the game who have a level that's above everyone else. And these players have been able to rise to the top when they were very young. So unless somebody has the level of Sinner and Alcaraz that's young and can beat them on a consistent basis, it's going to be very difficult for a young player to rise towards the top of the rankings. And like I said, a lot of these players that are ranked lower are going to be very difficult to beat. So I heard Fonseca say something that was very positive for me. And he said that his goal is to be seeded in Grand Slams by next year. And that is such a perfect goal because it's realistic. It's right in front of him. In the live rankings, I believe he's going to be 38 after this tournament if he loses in the second round. So he's so close to being in the top 32 in the world, which will give him a seed for a Grand Slam. And how far he can go? Well, he certainly has the potential to go extremely high. And today's match against a very tricky Kecmanovic, Fonseca played exceptionally well. He was down 5-3 in the first set and managed to win that set in the tiebreak, and he also won the second set in the tiebreak. Now, he did get sick on the court in the third set, but he powered through and won this match in straight sets. And again, Kecmanovic, a very difficult player to beat. So a very strong result from Fonseca. And I'm seeing improvements every time I'm watching Fonseca play. I studied his game a lot earlier this year, and he's got an exceptional forehand and backhand. When he's playing his best tennis, I compare his forehand and his backhand to the very top of the game. Players like Sinner, Djokovic, and Alcaraz. His ground strokes are that good. But tennis is not all about technique, how much power you can get, how much spin you can get. It's also about other things, such as shot selection, where your mental game is going to be very important, and how many mistakes you make in a match, how up and down you are in a match. And he certainly is far away from the top of the game in those aspects. There's no doubt about that. But the stroke that I thought was not near the top of the game, which was his serve, is improving in a very short amount of time. Fonseca is serving better than I've ever seen him serve before. And it's quite possible that he could have a mini breakthrough in this tournament. But as I've said in previous videos where I covered Fonseca, in a way I think it's better for him if he develops slowly. Because the thing about Fonseca is that he has an unbelievable fan base. The people of Brazil are so excited to have a fantastic tennis player that has the potential to go towards the very top. And they want to see him win really badly. But you have to be patient because, like I said, it's not so easy these days to make it through the top of the game. I think this step-by-step goal setting and getting there slowly at the end of the day might be better for Fonseca, because what has happened to some players in the past that have risen to the top very fast, there's a natural dip shortly after. Look what happened to Menchik after winning Miami. He cooled off quite a bit as well. Now, I just talked about Mboko, but it's quite possible that despite having incredible potential to reach the very top of the WTA rankings, she could easily go into a little slump after winning that huge tournament in Montreal. So tennis is a brutal game. Players deal with a tremendous amount of pressure. And I think the way Fonseca is developing is just perfect. It might take him 2 or 3 years to get to the top of the game, but I do believe that he can get there. And by top of the game, I mean be in the mix to win the big title and challenge Sinner, Alcaraz, or whoever is right behind him at the end stages of big tournaments. Let's talk about the night session. We had 2 matches. Venus Williams against Karolina Muchova, and we had Carlos Alcaraz against Riley Opelka. And I was so happy to see Venus playing well, because in this match, she started shaky. She might have been a little bit nervous, possibly, even though she's 45 years old and she's been on that court so many times. You can still experience nerves, no doubt about that. But after going down 2-0, Venus found her game, and I thought that she played an excellent match. I'm glad that Venus continues to talk about how much work she put into getting herself to this level, because she's received a tremendous amount of criticism. I already made a video dedicated to Venus Williams when she beat Peyton Stearns in Washington, so I'm not going to repeat the points that I made in that video. You can check that one out if you like. All this criticism was completely undeserved, because Venus Williams works unbelievably hard to maximize her level as a tennis player. And just think about it this way. If you're 45 years old, you have to put in possibly more work to get yourself to a physical standard where you can play a match like this against the number 13 player in the world who made the semifinals of the US Open in the last 2 years. Venus played a solid match, took a set of Muchova, and you gotta have respect for that. That is an incredible accomplishment at 45 years old. And I'm excited to see if Venus wants to keep going. I do think she had a brutal draw, and if she played like this against other players in her draw, Venus could have possibly won a match or 2 at the US Open. And that's, again, something that's unbelievable at the age of 45. Now, let's transition into the Alcaraz-Opelka match. And I think this was an absolute nightmare opponent for Alcaraz, but this was one of the cleanest first-round matches that I've ever seen Alcaraz play. The forehand was sharp. Sometimes Alcaraz can spray his forehand a little bit, especially in the early stages of tournaments, but today the forehand was sharp. And I think Carlos knew that he had to be sharp, because against Opelka, one slip up on your own serve means that you could potentially lose the set. I thought Carlos played well. The only thing that's still an issue for him here and there is the serve. And it's not the technique. I've talked many times about the adjustments that Carlos has made, but it's more specifically his toss that sometimes drifts a little bit too far to the left on his first serve. Sometimes it's not high enough. Sometimes it's not in front of the baseline enough. So there are some inconsistencies in the toss, no doubt about it. Carlos is not a player that hits all serves from the same toss location. So the toss is still an area of improvement, and I thought the second serve could have been better for sure. But in any case, Carlos Alcaraz is looking sharp. He's also looking fresh. He's looking hungry to me, and I think he's going to be a big threat to win this whole tournament.